Welcome to the Real Freedom Podcast, where we inspire you to pursue your passion to gain time and financial freedom through opportunities in real estate. I'm your host, Mike Swenson. Let's get some real freedom together. All right, welcome everybody to another episode of the Real Freedom Podcast. And what's exciting about today's episode is a lot of times we talk about investors. Sometimes there's investors out there that have hundreds of units, thousands of units, or they've been in business for 15, 20 years. And today we get a chance to talk with somebody who has just begun the investment journey, gone through, taken the key couple of first steps and is right in the thick of it. And so today we have Amy Holweger on, and Amy's going to share about her process of getting her first couple of rental units, what her and her husband Phil have gone through, the questions that they've had, the fears that they've had. And here they are a few months later, and they are into their journey. So we're going to really hear about the early steps for a lot of you out there that maybe haven't dipped your toe in the water yet. Hopefully this episode will give you a chance to have the confidence to move forward and take that leap and begin your investment journey. So, and I should also quick clarify, Amy is a client of ours. So she's worked with me personally. So you can hear her feedback on working and going through the process, but just wanted to make sure that I disclose that as well. Welcome, Amy. We're so excited to have you.
Thanks, Mike. I'm happy to be here.
Why don't you just share a little bit about your background and then kind of what got you excited about investing and why you wanted to do it and what it's going to accomplish for you and Phil?
My background is, I work in e-commerce for my day job, and my husband works in IT, and we bought our first condo, which was our first primary property a few years ago, I think about five years ago now. And when we were going through that process, how we got interested in real estate is that I knew nothing about it when we were doing it, and our agent in Washington State kind of helped, answer questions and things. And he realized that I had an interest. So at one point, after we actually closed on the condo, he was like, "Hey, there's like this landlord meetup group. Do you want to go?" And I was like, "I don't know what this is, but sure, yeah, let's go." So I went there, and Jennifer Beatles was actually a guest speaker that night. And so I got to meet her for the first time. I thought she was super awesome. And I was like, whoever this person is, I need to know more about her. And then so I found her and found found her meetup group through Addicted to ROI, and started going to those groups. So I just thought that it was the idea of real estate was really interesting. And so, we spent a lot of time learning. I think that there were kind of a lot of fears holding us back in the beginning. We were really trying to, get our financial house in order. And then, right after we bought the first condo together, we weren't married yet. And then we got married a bit after that, a little shortly after that. But so there was a lot of life stuff happening, but we were still regularly going to the meetups and meeting people. And then we decided, all right, well, we want to invest, but we need to do it out of state because Washington State just wasn't an option for us. And Jennifer Beatles was, that's what she specialized in, was, investing out of state. And we weren't quite ready at that point, I think, to take the leap. But then we ended up buying a house, and then we stayed there for a couple of years. But right after, a couple months after we bought our actual house in Washington, then COVID hit. And so, kind of like everybody else, everything was really uncertain about just life and everything. But we, I think at that point during COVID, we took Jennifer's 5 Years to Freedom course. And that's where we had a lot more hands-on experience kind of analyzing deals, and we gained a lot more confidence through that process. And I was like, all right, well, if we really want to get serious, we want to do 5 Years to Freedom, having this huge mortgage, even though we went to a place where, it was certainly not expensive for Washington. We kind of moved really further north out of Seattle to get, the best deal that we could. And then we realized, well, this mortgage is really weighing us down. We've slowly kind of increased our income over the years. I finally then within the last year then got a couple new jobs and really increased my income. And then we're like, all right, let's move to Minnesota. I actually spent about 6 months kind of researching because we wanted to invest, but at the same time, it's like, well, if we can move somewhere else, we can have a lot more money to invest every month. So we decided that, well, maybe we'll just move to the state we want to invest in. And Minnesota was one of the states that Jennifer had kind of identified in the Minneapolis area as a place that was good to invest. And I was like, well, that's close to home. And, we had picked out quite a few states and gone through and said, what fits our needs, and Minnesota fit those for us. And I'm from North Dakota, and so it was close, somewhat close to home. And so we're like, all right, well, let's just do it. Let's go. And Phil was on board, and he's very adverse to change. So the fact that he's like really gung ho to move to Minnesota, I'm like, all right, this is a sign we need to go to Minnesota. I had signed up for the inner circle with Jennifer Beatles, and then so that I could get referrals. And then I got referred to you, Mike. She gave me a couple options, and I interviewed people, and you were the person I chose so that we could go and start looking at properties.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about, because I know, people listening to this podcast are from various different states and even different countries, but thinking about Washington versus Minnesota, one of the things that I think people like about investing in the Midwest is you have the ability to earn cash flow each month, and the appreciation may not be as good as it is in other places, kind of depending on where the hot spots are, but it's solid, right? In the Midwest, we're stable, right? Versus on the coast, a lot of times for trying to find a rental property, you're banking on appreciation, and you're probably taking a cash flow hit every month to be able to do that. Now, you can still make a lot of money in appreciation, but it's costing you to be able to do that. So maybe just, spend a couple minutes and just kind of talk about those differences and why a place like Minnesota, when you're looking at the United States, I could invest in anywhere, why is the Midwest or Minnesota better than, well, I shouldn't say better than, but why is it, what is the upside of that versus comparing it to someplace on the coast?
Yeah, well, Minnesota is the best state anyway, just period. But
I am biased, but at the same time, people do invest in all states. So
they do. In Washington, that was where we got a lot of kind of our seed money to start investing, was because even though we only owned our house for 2 years, because we were kind of in the bubble where everything was appreciating really fast, just to people moving out of Seattle or even moving from California and flooding into Washington, and all the housing prices just went crazy. And so we actually had a lot of appreciation from that we were able to take that and bring it over to Minnesota to invest that. But Minnesota we chose just because it was very much, we wanted kind of lower priced real estate to purchase. And we also wanted to be able to have cash flow. Cash flow was kind of our number one thing, because long-term we want to retire early. So being able to have cash flow that puts money in our pocket every month helps us to grow our portfolio, but then also it gives us the option then, and hopefully within 5 years to have the option to not work anymore if we wanted to. So that was, kind of the things that drove us to invest in Minnesota.
Okay. So then when you guys finally decided where you were going to land, it took a little bit of time. There was a lot of space in Minnesota where you could consider living. And we finally selected a location, which is a little bit north of the Twin Cities, so about an hour away. And so you guys got your property there, you started there, and then kind of where did your investment journey go once you got roots in Minnesota?
Yeah, so we are right outside of St. Cloud, and so we decided that we would go and invest in St. Cloud versus Minneapolis, just because it seemed, just analyzing some properties, that the cash flow was quite a bit stronger in St. Cloud, even if the appreciation wasn't quite as high. But again, cash flow was where we were going, and so I started looking at deals, and then was kind of eager as soon as we bought our primary to start looking at investment properties. And I think that one that I found in St. Cloud was just looking at the MLS from the listings and ran the numbers, and it was really excellent cash flow. And so, and so then we just move forward on that one.
So, a lot of people that have concerns about investing, number one is I don't have the money. Number two is I don't necessarily know what I can do financially. Why don't you walk through that process in terms of, you guys were fortunate to have money saved up, but then two, you have to talk with a lender, you have to put together a strategy. So how did that conversation work for you to kind of decide what can we afford, what type of price point do we want to be in? And then that eventually led into your second property too.
Yeah, well, for what we could afford, with how crazy housing prices were in Washington, I mean, we still bought below our means in Washington, but with our combined 3 properties that we own of our 2 rentals and our primary home is actually equivalent to the single house that we owned in Washington, which we qualified for. So we knew that we had some room to purchase properties and be able to make that work for qualifying. But we knew that we were going to, at least for the first one, we wanted to do, do our 25, we wanted multifamily, and we wanted to do the, needed 25% down. So we just looked at what we had for money to kind of get as big of a property as we could, and to be able to put that money into something that would cash flow so that we could go and get our next deal. Our initial strategy actually was always to use just the cash 25% down. And we did that on the first 2 deals, but now we're at the point where I don't necessarily want to wait for more cash to come in. And I do want to stabilize our 2 properties before moving forward on another one. But, to me, doing the 25% down felt like a really safe, first move to make, very conservative. And some people build their entire portfolio that way, just based on risk tolerance, and everybody has a different level of risk tolerance. And I think that's totally fine. If you want to do 25% down and save up, and that's, and don't want partners, or, don't want to, do a BRRRR or something like that, then, that was where we were. We just wanted something kind of turnkey so that we didn't have to worry too much about fixing things up on our first one.
Yep. And I think that's, there's a lot of people that do go that route as far as, hey, I'm going to either house hack, live in the house. I know we were joking when we were doing the inspection on your first rental property about how that really wasn't your intent to show up on weekends and paint and repair stuff and all that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, you were looking for something turnkey. So I think that's, as people are trying to figure out what type of property they want, you have to decide, am I willing to put in work? Do I want to put in work, or not? And so for you guys, it's, you have jobs, you're busy at your jobs. And so you want that leverage of not having to spend nights and weekends there working on a property. And then 2, the other decision you guys made is you did choose to hire a property manager right out of the gate. So talk about what your considerations were in making that decision too.
So for the property manager piece, I mean, basically I wanted to start building systems that would allow us to scale. So starting, with our first couple of properties, making sure that I have all of our documents organized, that I know what's going on with each of the properties, that we're doing proper bookkeeping on them. And for, I know there are a lot of people out there that self-manage, but for me, it was just not, I would have to put in a lot of time and effort into learning the landlord laws and, contacting tenants and things like that. And, while some people, they have great tenants and nothing ever goes wrong. I always like to plan for things to go wrong. And so I knew that if things, even though our first rental property is only 8 minutes away from us, we decided to hire a property manager because we said, man, we're only paying, a couple $100 a month on this property. And that's totally worth it for us to not have to worry anytime something breaks or if the tenants aren't paying. And really our property manager only surfaces things to us if it's over, $300 for a repair, or if the tenants are having issues, which we really haven't had any issues with our tenants. We had one thing that came up, but it wasn't big and it got resolved. But yeah, we just didn't want to have to handle repairs and worry about, having our, all of the the property manager we chose already has a team built up. He already has, repair people that he trusts and vendors that he can set things up with, which, then was a really good decision for us, because within the first, I think, couple of weeks of closing, we had a water heater that went out, and we knew that the water heaters were very old when we purchased the property, so we had planned for that. But
I think it's the record for the oldest water heater in an inspection that I've ever done so far, and so we were surprised it was working at that time.
Yeah, no, and the property manager, they said that it had been kind of just patched up, and I was like, yep, just replace it, it's fine. But that was all that they did. They called me, they said, hey, this is broken. I said, great, get it replaced. And they're like, oh, okay. And then that was it. So they went and they got everything replaced. They got our rental license for us. Anything else that has been broken, they immediately have responded, and the tenants seem very happy with the property management so far. So it was actually kind of a coincidence that he happened to be managing the property prior to us getting the property, so he knew everything about it. And so it was, I think, the easiest handoff we could have possibly imagined on our first property. But I think that our property manager on our first property has just been knocking out of the park, and has saved me so much time and energy and stress that I wouldn't, like I said, even though it's less than 10 minutes from us, I wouldn't choose to have it any other way, just because of the time. It's totally worth it for me. So
yeah, and I think you guys are thinking long term, which is important, because a lot of times people think by the dollar, right? Like, it's quite possible that if you look back 12 months of having your first rental, that you were like, yes, I could have saved X amount of dollars by not having a property manager. But then if you look at the time that came up, right, the water heater, it's, hey, now I'm in between my job and I got to go call some vendors and try to figure it out. Little things like that. Or if the tenants did turn over, now you're trying to figure out how to find new tenants. And so, it's certainly possible in 1 year's time, you could save some money. But when you're thinking big picture of, look, I want to eventually replace my job, or have the freedom to be able to replace my job if I want to, having a property manager is key. So you're really thinking about that stuff long term. And then in terms of the property itself, for your first one, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's 3 bedrooms and 4 bedrooms on a duplex, right?
Yeah, so it's a very large unit. So like the 3 bedroom is 1,100 square feet, and the 4 bedroom is then 2,300 square feet. It's just like this monster building. We were lucky to get those large ones. Then we have 2 families in there that I think that hopefully be in there long term, and they've been good tenants so far.
As somebody who analyzes properties, I mean, most of what we see is always 2 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 2 bedroom. Yeah. And so when you can find those ones where there's 3 bedrooms or even 4 bedrooms, and I remember there was one duplex that I found where it was 5 bedrooms on both sides. Like those are the ones where they don't come around much. I mean, I've maybe seen one in the past year or year and a half. But when you can find 3 and 4 bedrooms, it helps the economies of scale. There's a little bit less supply of those. So hopefully you guys can fill those more quickly. And then obviously you can charge more for rent. So you do gain the benefit of the economies of scale if you can find those 3 and 4 bedroom units. Yeah,
definitely. And I mean, the purchase price on that one was a little higher, but not too much higher than, our Minneapolis property, which was, 2 bedroom units. And it was much smaller square footage wise. I mean, half the square footage, if not less than that, than the one that we purchased in St. Cloud. So we just really got really good bang for our buck on that property.
Yep. And I think too, one thing to share, I know there's a lot of people when they look nationally at investing in properties, they think, oh, the 1% rule. For those that don't know what that is, it's you look at the purchase price of the property and your monthly rents are roughly 1% of that purchase price. And for both of your properties, you are give or take right around that 1% rule. On your first property, you were well above it. Your second one, you're kind of right at that 1% rule. But I think that goes to show that they're still out there. We analyze a lot of properties And there's so many of them that they're not anywhere close. But when you hold out and you're patient and you find those, they're still out there. And so, a lot of times people are just giving up, thinking there's no chance I can ever get that. But both of your properties are right around that 1% rule. So hang in there. You can find those properties and see how they produce over time.
Yeah, and I'd say I've in the properties I analyze, like I feel like there, especially in this area, that there are a lot of properties that do meet the 1% rule. They just may not meet my criteria for other reasons, or
Right.
Even if they meet the 1% rule, I know that there might be even better deals out there, and so then I kind of hunt for those.
And I think going back to, there are a lot of properties that you've experienced above the 1% rule. Going back to the value of a good property manager, I think that's what we can chat about, because we've had a few properties where we've reached out to your property manager and said, hey, what do you think about this? And he said, you know what, not the right area, not the right type of tenant here. Maybe it's an area where there's maybe more turnover, maybe more likely that they're not going to pay their rents. And so having a property manager that's experienced in the area, has been around, has seen things, can really advise you on, hey, even though on a spreadsheet the numbers might look nice, in reality, it may just not be a fit for you. And so I think that's where the value of the property manager, you're also paying for that wisdom and expertise where, Amy, brand new to Minnesota, could try to figure it out on her own. You might be successful, but at the same time, why don't we lean on somebody who's been a property manager in this area for hundreds of properties for years and years and years? They can quickly just say, no, that's really not the right fit. Or when you factor in the maintenance costs, on this type of building, it's going to be X amount higher. And so don't do that. So we've really relied on our property manager to help guide some of those purchase decisions as well.
Yeah, definitely. Because it's like you can do your research and make sure the neighborhoods are good and all of that. But there are just some things that, even though we live here, that we don't know, or we may miss, that are just for things that are located in the area that maybe we didn't think about, or that this checks all my boxes and this looks pretty good. But again, there's factors that, because he's kind of boots on the ground, he knows the area really well. And he's like, I've actually had a property in this area, and this is how it did. And this is a similar type of property. So, I don't think this would work out well for you. So even though all of the research and everything else is yes, you still have experience, which, you could still choose to move forward with that and say, I think we can make it work. And, he'd be like, all right, well, let's do it then. But, I think it's super valuable to have, a couple of people look at that and just verify, yes, you're making a good decision, or no, this is a really terrible one. And it, could have saved us from, having a vacant property, or, renting out below what we thought we could get for it. And, a lot of other things.
Let's just chat a little bit then about your second property. So first one you guys closed, was that November of last year, if I'm remembering right? So November 2021. And then your most recent purchase, you guys closed March, right, of 22?
April 29th.
Oh, April. Time flies, right? So April 29th. So you guys went from moving to Minnesota last year to first property in November, second property in April. So it can happen really fast. So talk a little bit about your thought process as you were looking at buying your second property then.
Yeah, so thought process that I decided to open up to Minneapolis, just because, if we did want a little more appreciation, or just to kind of get into a market where that isn't necessarily driven just by schools, whereas St. Cloud, because there are a lot of schools there, that's kind of more what it's driven by. We don't have students in our properties, but we've got families. But looking at Minneapolis, I feel like the risk of having properties there is a little bit lower, just because as you think about the changes that are happening with COVID, even where people are not necessarily going on campus all the time for school and things like that, that Minneapolis has a lot more opportunities for jobs, which in Minnesota, that's something to look at, because you get out to some of the more rural communities, And there may be a really good property that looks really good on paper, but if there's only one big company that employs everybody and then it goes under, thinking of like Albert Lee, for example, that seems to be kind of, digging deeper into that one. There were some deals that came up that looked good, but then, maybe from what I was looking at, that maybe there might be have companies that pulled out or something. So it's like, trying to hedge against possibilities of, people not having employment in the case of if we have a recession. And I thought that Minneapolis might be a stronger option for us. So I thought we'd at least try one there, see how it goes, and then if we find we really like investing in Minneapolis more, maybe start putting more properties there.
Yep. Yeah, and I think for people trying to consider, what am I going to use to choose where I want to have a property? It's different for everybody. Like you chose your property in St. Cloud was certainly higher cash flow, a little bit less appreciation. The property in Minneapolis is going to be a little bit less cash flow, but a little bit more appreciation opportunity. It's in a neighborhood that is potentially more up and coming. It's in a very convenient location. And so you're looking at, okay, cash flow in the short term might not be quite as good as a property in St. Cloud, but if you fast forward 3 years, 5 years, I might hit that appreciation a little bit stronger, which provides more opportunities if you do some sort of cash out refi. And then like you had mentioned, a place like Albert Lee, there's great cash flow opportunities. The population has held pretty stable. It's gone down a little bit over the last 10 years. So you're looking at, is my cash flow play worth the long-term possibilities of what's the job market going to look like 10 years from now, in a place like a St. Cloud versus a place like a Minneapolis versus a place like Albert Lee. And so, yeah, you're kind of looking at what are you comfortable with? What is Phil comfortable with? And some people are like, hey, I wouldn't touch that one with a 10-foot pole. And another investor might say, hey, that's exactly the type of property that I'm looking for. And so everybody's kind of different in their analysis. But yeah, you guys banked on Minneapolis as a potential up and coming neighborhood with a good potential appreciation play. And let's see where that goes.
Yeah, definitely. And I wanted to get a mix of, appreciation and cash flow, just because cash flow gives us money now, but, appreciation gives us money in the future to do more deals. And so it's good to have a mix of both. I mean, the property still cash flows, which is nice. But yeah, we're kind of banking on appreciation to, like you said, do a cash out refi or a HELOC or something like that in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay. So now that you've got two under your belt, what is running through your head as you think about the future? I know, Amy and I text quite a bit back and forth with ideas and thoughts, and it changes, and there's lots of great opportunities out there. But what are you guys thinking as you think about maybe even the next 2, 3, 4 properties in the future? What's running through your head?
Yeah, so we're I think that Minnesota has a lot of opportunity, and so we would like to get some more properties here, but we're also looking at Florida, since your team is now doing properties there as well, and looking at short-term rentals, because I know there is a lot of opportunity for short-term rentals. I definitely wouldn't want our portfolio to be entirely short-term rentals, just because, again, things like COVID can happen where people stop traveling. But then, the long-term rentals we like to have, but obviously because they kind of give you that balance, they give you that base where then you always have cash flow. But I think once we're kind of really solid with the long-term rentals, that short-term rentals or even mid-term rentals, since there's so much here for healthcare, that I think the midterm rentals are a good opportunity, even in a place like St. Cloud. And so, I think we're kind of open at this point to a few different options. But I think that the long-term rentals we still want to do. So I'm looking at, if we do more long-term rentals, doing something bigger, like maybe like an 8 to 12 unit. It feels, because I kind of go like based on, all right, what's my comfort level here? Who knows? We could find a 16 unit that we fall in love with. We're able to, get the financing that we need, and we're able to get, the partners that we need, and we just make that work. So I don't like to box in too much what we're going to do, because it seems that I have these, my dreams always seem too small when we actually go out and are doing things. We're like, well, we could do more than this without really straining ourselves much more. So, long-term rentals, I think we want to get into bigger units, and we're working kind of right now to network and find people who do want to invest with us, so we can start doing the commercial properties, and then reserving our spaces of the residential loans for the short-term rentals, because most likely those will be single family. I wouldn't want to buy a single family necessarily as a long-term rental, but I like them for the short-term rentals, for the midterm and short-term, just because in up north, we've got all the lakes. And so I think that we would like to try a short-term rental in Minnesota. And then, there are lots of other opportunities in other states as well for short-term rentals, but I feel like, you can get lakeside property for a really good price here. And then it's, good for the summer and then good for the winter, because you've got lots of people snowmobiling, ice fishing, all of that. I think we're kind of looking to do a mix, and we'll just kind of buy the deals that if we find a short-term one that comes up and we want to buy it. But I think those are the types that we're open to, are more doing the vacation rentals, and then still keeping long-term rentals in there as like a buffer. So.
Yeah. What I love about you guys is you're certainly open to opportunity, and, trying to figure out where that niche is going to be, but also be smart about diversification. And so, it could be short-term up north. It could be midterm rental, depending on the location. It could be Florida. It could be, other things. And so you definitely are keeping your options open. And too, like you said, not limiting your thinking to, hey, what if I can partner with some folks and we can find a 4, 8, 12, 16 unit property, because they're out there. It's just, having the right conversations with the right people. And if you could take down 16 units, that opens up a lot more opportunity for you. And so it's just finding those right people and those right connections to do that. So, so I love your willingness to be open and to try things and to take risks too, because there's people that have been in real estate for 20 years that continue to say, oh, I really wish I could get into rentals, but I just don't know how. And they have all the information, they have all the connections that they need, and they don't do it. And you're jumping into a state that, a year ago you didn't live in, and now here you are rolling up your sleeves and getting a lot of stuff done. So I know a lot of people would be envious of the position that you're in just 6 short months.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a lot of work, but it's been a lot of fun. And I'm really excited to buy more rentals. But also then I've got, my husband who I'm definitely the more risk taker, and he is more risk adverse. So it balances out nicely. So, we always, even though he's not always as present in these kinds of conversations, he's definitely my partner on the back end, helping us make sure that we're not taking too much risk, and that we are kind of going at it from a place that, allows us to sleep at night. It's kind of like, people always ask, how much did you have in an emergency fund? It's like, well, how much do you need to sleep at night? And I feel like with our rental portfolio, that's kind of how we approach it. It's and I think our risk tolerance kind of goes up over time, and what we're willing to do. And that's why, I never say never, because we said never to a lot of things. We were never going to partner. We were never going to do commercial, and now we're like, all right, well, we've learned new things. We've met new people, and these seem like really great options for us. And so we're always excited to learn more and do more and see what happens.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting to see what happens in the next 12 months or even, 3, 4, 5 years, because you guys have made great strides in just a short period of time. So if anybody, has questions and they're looking at how do I get started and what do I do? And Amy, just help me get over my fear of getting started. How can they reach out to you?
I can be reached via my email. So amy.holweger@outlook.com would be probably the best place to reach me.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your journey, and to prove that you can work with me and still have a good time and be alive to tell about it.
Yes, it's been fun.